Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. As you are just getting yourself situated and logged in, if you would just start with introductions in the chat, that would be fantastic. It's always great for our panelists and also for participants to know who's with us today. I say introductions in the chat. Remember that if you just scroll along the bottom of your screen, you'll see a chat opportunity. All you have to do is click on that, and then you can just type in your name and maybe what school you're with. That would be fantastic. I'll just remind everyone also to have your mute turned on unless you're speaking. That way we'll just make sure to keep the airwaves clear here as we get started in just a minute.
You're muted.
Okay, I always love to honor everyone's time and make sure that we kind of set the tone properly by starting and ending on time. For those of you that this might be your first opportunity to join us live for a Secretary Series event, I'm Wendy Zadeb, the Executive Director at the Michigan Association of Secondary School Principals. And today we have gathered together to talk about year-end events. We have a great panel of principals with us today. You're going to hear from Bob Kefchin, MASSP's lobbyist, who's really going to start us off by talking about kind of what are the current epidemic orders that we are working under, what are the gathering size limitations, and what are other considerations legislatively that we should be thinking about as we plan year-end events. And we also have with us a panel of principals who are going to share not only what they did last year under those epidemic orders, but then also what their plans are tentatively, knowing that things are always subject to change for this year. So we have Jennifer Bustard, the principal at Mona Shores High School. We have Amy Hendry, who's the principal at Carter Middle School and Warren Consolidated Schools. We have Val Bogan, who's from Kalamazoo Central High School. We have Steve Carlson from Sandusky Junior Senior High School. We have Joe Esper from Traverse City West High School and Katie Pennington from Holland High School. And I know all of our panelists will not only be ready to kind of share their thoughts, but they'll also be willing to take your questions as we go along. So if you are interested in asking a question, please feel free to put those in the chat. We also have the opportunity to unmute you and you could ask your question live. So whatever works, we will be able to do that. Remember, as always, if you miss a Secretary Series interview or piece with one of the different webinars that we've done thus far, we always email you afterwards a copy of the slide deck and a recording of the presentation. I know last week we had, or last Secretary Series session, we had two really great opportunities. We had pupil accounting, which most of you elected to do. Obviously, that was very timely, coming just before count day. But the other one that we ran was on kind of like a self-help, kind of thinking about your own personal wellness. If you missed that, I would really encourage you to go back and check out that recording because it was fantastic. I've personally been in a lot of those different sessions and, you know, maybe thought that I kind of knew a lot about that, but I thought that the session was particularly good. So if you missed that one, and you're feeling a little stressed out, they really gave a lot of good suggestions of things that you might want to consider just for your own mental health and well-being. So don't forget to go back and check these out if you happen to miss something or get called away from your desk. I think we might have one more slide, Ange.
Nope.
All right. So we're going to start off, as mentioned, with MASSP's lobbyist, Bob Kefton, who's going to run us through our current reality. And of course, just because we're doing this webinar today, the governor announced that she's having a press conference today at 1:30 that might have some information about K-12 schools. So everything that we share during this presentation is always subject to change. And if a new epidemic order comes out, you just never know when things might kind of transition or the rules might change. And I'm sure you're aware of that, as that's been happening, throughout the pandemic. So what Bob is sharing with you today is literally as of the moment. So Bob Kefton, thanks.
Yeah, so I don't think we're going to have a new order this week. I was told unofficially not to expect any changes in the gathering guidelines this week, but that they're certainly looking at these as the situation evolves and data trends change. So we'll see how it plays out. But what I want to talk about, because we're talking about end of year events, right? These are all gatherings. Anytime you get a bunch of people together, you're talking about the gathering guidelines. But I want to be clear about what kind of gatherings we're talking about. We're not talking about these 2 household gatherings or small outdoor gatherings. These are different things. What we're looking at here are more of the rules that you would be dealing with around restaurants and bars, theaters, movie theaters, stadiums, and nightclubs, depending on the kind of year-end event we're talking about. And so when you look at the February 4th epidemic order, and you can find this online at mi.gov/coronavirus, it's the most recent the most recent order that's on there, and it's linked right from the homepage. When you look in this order, you want to look at subsection 3 of the order, because subsection 3 is where we talk about gathering restrictions for entertainment facilities, recreational facilities, and food service establishments. And those entertainment facilities or recreational facilities are the kind of places that you're going to be doing things like prom or graduation or senior honors dinner or whatever your year-end event might be that you're looking at having and trying to figure out the rules and see whether or not you can have it. And so what I'm going to do over the next couple of minutes here is just walk through what these rules look like and then give you some examples of what they might look like if we applied the current rules to end of year events. So gathering rules. Any gathering in a space like a graduation or a prom or anything else, masking and distancing. No question, masking and distancing. Masks must be worn at all times except when eating. And groups of people at the event together must be spaced at least 6 feet apart. So when I say groups of people, right now, if you were to go to the movie theater, whether the movie theater allows it or not, you can go to the movie theater under the state epidemic order with a group of up to 10 people from no more than 2 households. So 2 households, your household and another household, or you're talking about graduation, you can have parents with 1 set of grandparents. That's 2 households. So up to 10 people, up to 2 households is what a group is. And then between those groups, you have to have 6-foot spacing. And within that, capacity limits apply, depending on the venue, depending on the type of gathering. So there are 2 different capacity limits we need to worry about here. One set of these are based on venue density limits. The other is total number of people, venue capacity limits. And this is not an either or, this is a both and. So when we say venue density limits, if you have a fixed seating venue, a gymnasium, a theater, a big arena, kind of place where you're going to do a graduation, probably. Your venue capacity, you're limited to 20% of the venue capacity. If you have no fixed seating, big field out in the middle of nowhere, you can have 20 people per 1,000 square feet. In addition to those limits, you have venue capacity limits of no more than 100 patrons may be gathered with any distinct space within the venue. So let's say you have a venue, a big venue with multiple rooms. You're limited both to the overall capacity, 20% of the overall capacity of that venue, and then within each of the rooms, within each distinct space within the venue, you may have no more than 100 people within each of those distinct spaces. There are different limits for sports, and we may end up shifting more toward what the limits look like for sports. Right now, the limits for sports are in an arena or stadium of seating greater than 10,000, you can have 500 people. Under 10,000, you can have 250 people. So again, different limits for sports, but that's not what we're talking about here. When we're talking end of year events, graduation, etc., those aren't sporting events. And right now the limit is 100 people per individual space, individual room within the venue. Some other nuances that you want to be aware of when we're talking about this. If you have a venue that cannot adhere to masking and distancing, that venue may not be open. And one of the examples they give is nightclubs. So think about nightclubs when you're thinking about things like prom, right? Masking and distancing and dancing don't always go together. So another nuance of this is there's a prohibition against mingling or physical contact between groups. So you can have that group of up to 10 people from up to 2 households, but those groups can't intermingle. And you can't have physical contact between them. Food can be served like in a concession sort of way, but you can only eat it when patrons are seated. And there are different rules for food service establishments. Food service establishment like a restaurant. But let's say you wanted to try and do a dinner, right? Maybe you have an athletics dinner or a senior honors dinner. That would make you a food service establishment. And again, different rules there. These rules are written for restaurants. So keep that in mind as you're thinking about how this looks. But food consumption is allowed, again, only when patrons are seated. You can put up to 6 people at a table. Tables must be spaced at least 6 feet apart. There are no mingling between groups or gathering in common areas. So you can't have a dance floor. You can't have a social space where everybody sort of stands around, even if they're 6 feet apart. And for indoor dining, you're limited to 25% of capacity up to 100 people. The restaurant has to be closed between 10 p.m. and 4 a.m. So probably no all-night parties. And you have to display a particular MDHHS brochure that's available on their website for printing out. Now, note that all of these rules layer on top of one another. So if you're a food service establishment, you still have to abide by the capacity limits and the gathering rules. So you can have 6 people at a table, right? But you're still limited to groups of 10 from no more than 2 households. So 6 people at a table, no more than 2 households at the table. That's how this applies when you layer these rules on top of one another. So let's look at 2 examples just to give you some idea of what this would look like if you tried to apply it to a graduation. So let's say you're trying to do a socially distanced graduation. You are limited in terms of total people in your venue, whatever the venue is, to 20% of the total venue capacity. Now, you can't have more than 100 people in any distinct space within the venue. I don't know how this would apply to a football field versus the stands, whether different sections of the stands would be considered different spaces. The rules don't really anticipate an event like an outdoor graduation. They were written for more like winter events. And we've asked the governor's office and MDHHS, and they're working on thinking about what this will look like for spring events right now. But at least as of right now, no more than 100 people in any distinct space within the venue. You have to have social distancing and masking at all time. And again, those groups of 10 people from no more than 2 households. So you could have students on the field as long as they're socially distanced. You could seat siblings close to each other. You can have family groups in your stands, up to 10 people in a family group, as long as you have no more than 2 households. It's workable. Really, the big trouble here is going to be that 100 people in any distinct space capacity limit, what that looks like and how you can potentially implement that to make a graduation work. Take prom as your other example. Again, no more than 100 people in any distinct space within the venue. Maybe that works for prom, but note that certain venues aren't open, like nightclubs. And so to me, that right there makes it dicey whether or not running a dance is even an option. You can't have mingling or physical contact between your groups, making, again, dancing difficult. And you can have groups of up to 10 people from up to 2 households, but I don't know how you have more than, say, a double date between 2 sets of siblings with a group limit like that. So prom probably less workable than a graduation. There are things not covered by these orders. So there is a blanket exemption for extracurricular activities, just like there is for school, right? If you have kids in a classroom, they aren't subject to these limits. Extracurricular activities aren't subject to some of these limits. Again, masking, social distancing, these things apply, but not the group size limits. So what's considered an extracurricular activity? I don't know. I'm not sure that I would be comfortable framing a graduation or a prom as an extracurricular activity the same way I might frame a first robotics event or a band concert, but maybe that's something you want to talk to your local legal counsel about. We also don't know how the gathering rules are going to evolve over time or what changes districts might expect as the weather changes. Again, what we've seen and trends to consider on this is that outdoor gatherings tend to be less restrictive than indoor gatherings. We saw this in the fall. It's less of an issue now, but going into the spring, I suspect you'll see them moving back in that direction. Distancing and masking, though, seem to be non-negotiables. No matter what we do, we got to have distancing and masking involved. Venue restrictions based on a % of max capacity seems to be the way that they're generally handling capacity limits, and expect group limits for both people and households, max number of households. That's been consistent throughout the rules. So as I said at the top of this, governor's office and MDHHS are telling us that we shouldn't expect changes this week, but we should expect probably changes moving forward. We don't know exactly what those will look like, but I think given what we've seen so far, you can prognosticate what you might see going into spring. Do you guys have any questions? I'm happy to answer any questions.
So Bob, can you just clarify, because obviously a lot of these participants are, in school districts where at a football game, they've been able to have more than 100 people. So what's the difference there?
It's the way the rules are written. There are specific rules for sporting events. Those rules do not apply to anything other than sporting events. So you have rules for entertainment venues. And this is not like what we had in the spring where there were executive orders for individual groups or the things that changed all the time so it could be more responsive to individual circumstances. This is the Department of Health and Human Services writing blanket orders that apply to everybody. And so they're writing these rules more with movie theaters and those sorts of entertainment venues in mind, not really school graduation in mind. But because you're crossing over between these worlds, those are the rules you're living under. So that's why you have one set of rules for sports and another set of rules for graduation, because the graduation rules weren't really written for school graduation, they were written for movie theaters.
So as you know, some schools have their commencement ceremony in their gym. Some schools have their commencement ceremony out on their football field when weather permits. And then others actually rent a venue like, Meadowbrook in Rochester, or a sports dome of some kind, or a local college or something. Do you think the venue will have any bearing on what those capacity limits might be?
Absolutely. I think the larger the venue, the more people you'll potentially be able to fit. Right now, we have a 100-person limit, a total of 100 people. I think that limit's likely to go up, especially for outdoor events, especially as we move into the spring. I think you're likely to see that 100-person limit increase. So then your limit would be the venue capacity. You still may need to do things like cycling groups of students and families through. You may need to have multiple graduation times or ceremonies, break things down alphabetically, however you might need to do it to have smaller groups, but I think you're going to be able to have more than 100 people. I just don't see the limits getting high enough, even in the fall. I think the highest limit we had for a gathering was 500 people, maybe 1,000 for really, really, really big stuff. I don't know that, depending on the size of your school, I don't know that a large school district is going to be able to have graduation for everybody at the same time.
Well, thank you so much, Bob. I appreciate you giving us an update, and all of you secretaries who are part of the secretary subscription. If we get an update on any of these epidemic orders, we'll be sure to send out some type of update to you as well, to keep you in the loop. I know that in many cases, building secretaries are, calling venues and making arrangements on behalf of the principal. So we'll make sure that you are in the loop and ready to go. Thank you, Bob. I don't see any other questions for you, so you are off the hook, sir.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate your time.
All right, we are now going to move on and have some of our principals share with us, what they did last year for their events and what they have planned for this year. And first up, we've got Jennifer Bustard, who is a past president of MASSP and the principal at Mona Shores High School. And I know, Jen, one of the things I was thinking about with your students, you did such a great job last year of trying to make things special and trying to do unique things. When we were really at the start of the pandemic, and I know how challenging that was. I'm actually wondering if you tried to go back to just the same old graduation ceremony you used to do. I bet the kids would feel like they got gypped.
Wendy, you're right on. I think their celebrations started in May and went all the way through July. They got to wear their cap and gown more times than any other class in the history of Mona Shores. So from parades to pickups to, they got good use out of their cap and gowns for sure.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, Jen. And if you want to screen share, I think you know how to do that. So you can go ahead and start.
All right, so I'm going to share my screen. And I'm hoping everybody can see it. Wendy, are you able to see it? Awesome.
Yes, you're good.
Awesome. All right. So Mona Shores High School is a suburban sized school. We have about 1,200 students and we're in Muskegon County, so right on the lake shore of Michigan. And so last year was special for a lot of reasons. I have twins who were part of the class of 2020. So I really understood what they were going through since March 13th and the uncertainties. So I promised them from the get out that we would honor them as many times as we could and as safely as we could. So as you take a look at my slide share there, you'll notice that we are in a hybrid model this school year. I don't think we knew anything about hybrids last trimester, last spring. So yeah.
Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
I think that it's sharing to another monitor because we only see your Zoom page.
Well, that's fascinating. So Angel, if you want to take over for whatever reason, I usually don't have a problem with this, but whoever gets to it first wins.
Hang on one second. If you want to stop your share, I can share mine.
Absolutely. Thanks, Angel.
Didn't mean to cut in.
No, that's what teamworks are for.
Bear with me one second. There we go. Is that right?
Yeah, go ahead and put it in present mode and we'll be good to go.
Yeah.
Awesome.
There we go.
All right, fabulous. So these are just some photos of May through July, and we ended up starting out with a calendar based on some information that we got from MASSP, and Bob and his team were so helpful in sharing the metrics and projected times that maybe we could have an in-person celebration for our class of 2020. So we had originally planned a in-person graduation for the end of June and with a rescheduled time for July. And what that kind of looked like was a week to celebrate the seniors. And I'll get to that in just a second. But one of the things that we have in our school is an end of the year Sailor Pride Assembly, where we give away a car, we give away a moped, and we give a lot of our PBIS awards. And so we really felt strongly as a school that we needed to honor that. And so what we did is we set up in the Sailor Center and we did the assembly virtually. And if you remember at that time, people were looking for things to get excited about. So we live streamed it to all of our homes. We actually had the kids on a screen, and they were the 10 winners, finalists for the car were also on that screen in a Google Meets, and they're given a key, and let alone we were able to give a car away virtually. So it was super cool. Everybody got excited. There was music, there was prizes. So we will do that same assembly this year. And so we will have it in the Sailor Center, and we will live stream it to the classrooms. So the kids will still have an assembly. They just won't have it in person, but we'll do it again this year. So that was a big hit, and we plan on doing that again. So I'm going to click on the link where it says Class of 2020 Events. So what we ended up doing is I actually wrote a plan to our health department in Muskegon County based on the information, based on the expectations. And she approved each of our graduates, which was about 280, 4 tickets per family. And so our stadium, our football stadium, holds about 5,000 people, just about 5,300. And so we had an in-person graduation at Mona Shores High School Stadium. And if you look on that calendar, hopefully you can see it. Angel, can we see it? Give me a thumbs up, Angel. Okay, Wendy's got it. Good. So what we ended up doing is we had a week of senior celebrations. So on Monday, we had what was called a gala, and it replaced our prom. And so what we did is we had a Google form, and we sent it to all the seniors, and we had time slots. So we would only take 100 students at a time, and they could come in, socially distance, wear a mask, come in, take their photos. And they had an hour and a half of a time slot. And then that group left, and then another group came in. And so what that allowed everyone to do is get dressed up in the dress they already bought and the suit they already bought. They could have dinner with their parents at their houses. They could come, and this actually big tent that we had music, and they just kind of sat at their tables. They got some ice cream, and they actually had a gala. Now, I don't think they knew what a gala was, so we had to define that for them, but they knew there was no dancing up front, and we were very clear about how important it was to be safe. But they really enjoyed the fact that they could get together and just have conversation. We are planning on doing that again this year. Also, we had an outdoor honors convocation on our soccer field, and there's actually a photo there. We brought in huge jumbo screens so that we could have the presentation that we always do in the auditorium up on those screens, and each of the kids could bring in 2 parents, and that again was approved by our health department. So we had the ceremony outside. Then on Thursday, we had a senior breakfast in the morning where our food service had packaged food, and the kid could come in, grab their breakfast, and they went to their seats, and we had graduation rehearsal. And then obviously that night at 5 p.m. we had graduation. So we lucked out. The skies were blue. The weather was perfect. There was no rain. I think it was a blessing in disguise that we could have all of those things safely. If you look at the pictures, we had stickers on the bleachers so that households had to sit together. All of the kids were 10 feet apart, not 6 feet apart. All of the kids were wearing masks. We had senior speeches. We had senior songs singing. All of this was approved by our health department. It ran very smoothly. So we plan on doing the same thing. But this was a special week for the seniors, and it was in July. So they really had a good time with that. So I'm going to close out of that and get back to the fact that this year for the class of 2021, normally we go to the LC Walker Arena, and they're like, Mrs. Bustard, we don't want to go indoors. We want to go outdoors. We want this big fanfare that the class of 2020 had as well. So we plan on a June 1st graduation. If the metrics allow us to do that, we will have a rescheduled date for the end of June, and then a rescheduled date for the end of July, just as we did last year for the class of 2020. We plan on having honors convocation. If the numbers and the metrics allow, we will have it in our auditorium and live stream to those who cannot attend. If the metrics don't allow, we'll do it back outside again. So those are things that we're planning for our seniors. And then the last part is we've done some pretty cool things for our fine arts and our athletic departments as far as celebrations and end of season or end of year. Sometimes our fine arts are not as honored. And so what our band did last spring, and I assume he'll be thinking the same thing, is they had a drive-in celebration in the parking lot, and parents came in the cars and they gave away all of their band certificates, and just really had a great time. So it was a drive-through, and they had a good time with that. We also, just this December, Brady Rose in the athletic world was named a Football Player of the Year. And normally that's a big celebration in the Sailor Center. And we obviously couldn't do that. So what we did is we brought him and the coaches and his family, and we set up in the Sailor Center, and all of his teammates were on a screen through Google Meets, and they could watch this actually happen, and it was pretty cool. So we've done those things virtually, and we continue to do those things as well. So, and then last thing I'll share with you as far as retirements, you'll see Judy and her husband at their house. She had no idea, but we had 200 cars of students and parents and staff drive through her neighborhood with cards and posters and balloons, like a lot of you have done to honor Judy. In fact, everybody's like, we need to keep on doing that. That was super cool. So a lot of the traditions and end of the year celebrations we plan to continue. And we just hope that our metrics stay the course. And we will continue to partner with our Muskegon Health Department. They've been great partners and really have helped us make sure that these ceremonies are safe and that we can do them for the kids. So
thank you so much, Jen. You had so many great ideas. That's why I knew to recruit you to talk about this. And I really appreciate you throwing in the piece about the retirement. You know, that's another thing. Sometimes you forget, you know, after somebody dedicating, you know, 30 plus years of their life to, you know, their work, to just walk away and not have an opportunity to celebrate with that person, that was a really great idea. So I thank you for sharing that one as well. And also mentioning about the sports banquets and the band piece, because, you know, all of those things are just, you know, kind of rites of passage that we've always done, and trying to find ways to do them differently is great. So one question for you before you head off, because I know that you've got another engagement that you need to get back to. You know, you mentioned that you're going to be doing live streaming. Do you see it just kind of like as a silver lining of all of this? You know, you mentioned that when you did that big assembly that you do every year where a student wins the car, you know, that's so great, because in the past, you know, you would have never had an opportunity for parents or whoever wants to view that to tune in. So do you see live streaming as something that you'll just continue to do, you know, even once the pandemic's over?
Yeah, absolutely. So for grandmas and grandpas that live in Colorado or Florida and they can't make it, we actually had pictures sent to us of their little watch party in their house and just having a great time with it. So I really believe that, and we have what's called Sailor Nation. Live stream will be here from, you know, this day forward. And it really just gives access to everyone to honor and celebrate these kids. Pretty cool stuff.
Well, thanks for joining us, and good luck on your event. And we appreciate your time, Jen.
Absolutely. Take care, everyone.
All right. So next up, we have Amy Hendry, who is a middle school principal. So we're shifting gears a little bit. I'm sure that when you're listening to these principals speak, it doesn't matter what your venue is. If you're a middle school based person, a high school based person, a career tech center, you know, you're kind of just listening to ideas. And so thinking about how those, the different formats that principals have come up with and what they might look like for you. So as we shift gears here and think a little bit about middle school, you know, every year, every time there's a transition, we have fifth graders moving from an elementary to a middle school, usually do something for that. And same thing with eighth graders transitioning to high school. So that was one of the topics I asked Amy to speak about today. So thanks so much for joining us, Amy.
My pleasure. I think I already successfully shared my screen. If not, all right. Hey, success of my day today. All right. Well, I apologize. I wrote all over my agenda all of Jen's ideas. So I don't have a fresh agenda. So I'll do my best to go off of what I sent. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. For those of you that are secretaries holding down the fort, I just generally want to say thank you, because there's no way I would be successful without my secretary. We service about 756 students. It's approximately 250 per grade. And we are also in a hybrid model where we have students in school 2 days a week, and then working asynchronously on the opposite days, and then virtually 2 days a week. So my best, first and foremost, I want to say is I have always given people the advice to stay consistent with what you've done in education in the previous year. Now, the challenges we've had this year is doubling up, because you want to do for the virtual kids the same that you do for the hybrid students. So it's important for me always as a principal to just stay consistent. I did not go overboard as a principal with celebrations in addition at the end of last year. I just tried to maintain what we were doing during the pandemic. So if you look at some of my tips of the trade, tricks of the trade in 5th to 6th grade transition, I always take my secretary to go visit the elementary schools. This seems like a foreign idea, but your secretaries are the first faces that the students are going to see when they come up to 6th grade. So take your secretaries over to the elementary school and introduce them, or ask your boss, hey, are you going to elementary school? I'd like to go meet the 5th graders. It's just a unique opportunity to get to know their faces. Again, with 5th and 6th grade transition, I always download the list of 5th graders before I leave in the summer. And then I send each one of them a postcard over the summer, just welcoming them to Carter. I take a look at Power School, their grades, compliment them on some of their achievements in elementary school by looking at our Power School computer system. We also encourage Web, which is our mentor program where everybody belongs, to send letters to Carter, and then I mail them home to the individual students, just to get the students kind of that carrot of, hey, what's going on at Carter? This is cool. Like, what, I want to do this, I want to do that. In March every year, we do a parent night. I got to tell you, our parent night last year was March 6th, and I had 400 parents in my gym. And on March 13th was the day that the state closed down. So we got away from that with absolutely no exposure, but who would have known in less than 7 days that we would have shut our district and our state down. But parent night is my favorite night of the year. We do it before the master schedules go out, so the students get to see all the electives. Our band, our Spanish program, our robotics are driving all over the hallways, and it really pulls those 5th graders in to those elective classes and get them excited about coming to Carter. And it also gives our booster club an opportunity to sell some Carter wear and some t-shirts and things of that sort. One of the things that I've learned over the COVID pandemic is my parents love WebEx. They love WebEx more than my students do. And if I say I'm going to have a principal WebEx every Wednesday, I have anywhere from 40 to 100 parents on a virtual WebEx every Wednesday. I do them on Wednesday nights and Sunday nights. And sometimes I have the same parents. Sometimes I randomly have new parents. That will be one thing that I stay consistent with, pandemic or no pandemic, because my parents absolutely love it. Last year at the end during COVID, and when we were trying to figure out what to do with celebrations, obviously just trying to maintain some composure, my staff really embraced the videos, encouraging students and our groups to create videos just to stay somewhat connected. And then it became a challenge between whether the students could do a better video versus the staff members, and then the administrators got into it. So little things like that just keep the students engaged in the academics and the pride that goes into being a Carter Cougar. Last but not least, I always, and even as a secretary or an assistant principal or principal, I request an at-risk list of my 5th graders coming into 6th grade, so I know what to expect and how to plan for the beginning of the school year. Obviously, that's going to be a little challenging this year because we have our virtual students that are at risk and we have our face-to-face students. So the components of each one of those are just a little bit different. All right, all the fun stuff going into the celebration at the end of the year. Everybody's favorite time of year. Last year, same thing with Jen. We did do some parade of graduates. In Warren Consolidated Schools, we have 3 elementaries, 1 middle school and 1 high school, all connected. So we have 3 feeder paths that come to our middle school and 1 middle school that goes to a high school. So elementary and middle school did an outstanding job of teaming up with the parades and, you know, the lawn of balloons and the photographs last year. But this year we already plan to include elementary, middle, and high school. So we will be doing that going into in May of this year. We always have an all-A principal breakfast. Miss Hendry makes pancakes, something that we've done as a tradition since I've been here. We did not choose to do that last year because the state was shut down and the requirements didn't allow us to do it. But now that I heard what Bob said about the tables and expansion, we might be able to get some prepackaged pancakes from our kitchen. My wheels are going with that one. and potentially open up that breakfast in our cafeteria and our gymnasium because they are connected. Last year I mailed all A certificates home. I didn't really like that. So this year, if we are still in our situation, I'm going to hand deliver each one of them to our students. We have roughly 100, 120, and I'm going to commit to delivering each one and putting it in the hands of the student before the end of June. This is an oldie but a good one. Every 8th grader going to high school gets a personalized message from the principal and the assistant principal on their report card, and it goes home. It's mailed home, and it is a positive message. Good luck at Cousino High School. Was outstanding to have you. I really remember this time when you were in 6th grade, and it takes a long time, but I have students that have held on to them and they're in their scrapbooks. I commit to do it. It takes probably 2 weeks to do it. My hand is killing me after, but it is something that I suggest you do because the parents and the students love it. My favorite part of the year is standing on the roof of my school and taking my 8th grade photograph. 2 years ago, we did a large 250 person peace sign. Clearly, we couldn't do that last year. So my counselors divided up the students into by alphabet. Letters A through C came in and they did the 2. So on and so forth until we were separately able to make a 2, 0, 2, and a 0. And then we photoshopped it together. So whether we do it in person or we do it virtually, we stay consistent with what we've always done in the last year from the previous year, because we don't want to stop the traditions, but the students look forward to them. So we've got to continue to do our best to provide them. Again, I always send an at-risk list of students and interventions that are provided to the high school counselors, so they know how to continue to support our students. That's pretty big in my category. I don't ever want students walking in without any support. Obviously, I encourage you at any point to make sure that your websites are up to date and your registration is ready to go for the next school year. But I appreciate the time today. That's all I have. I'm going to keep focusing on Jenny's list to make my end of the year a rock star, and I'm going to look for a car. Thanks for having me.
Amy, before you sign off,
yeah.
I know you've got to run to another thing. What's your thought about your 8th grade or your kind of that, what is that, 6th grade parent night then? You're thinking that's just going to have to be virtual?
Well, you know, Wendy, I thought a lot about it. And sometimes we just do things in one night because it's easier for administrators just to get it all done in one night. But why can't we do it in 5 days? We just bring a smaller group together. So I'm leaning more towards just expanding the event over multiple days, maybe even 2 weeks at a time, bringing in, 30 parents at one time to walk the building and utilize my staff and my web leaders. Obviously that's more work, but it's manageable and it's safer, and we can still provide our 5th graders were in the building for an hour and a half before they came to hybrid. So how unfair is that? So I'm even with my celebration and everything this year, my principal's breakfast, I'm just looking at more days, less people rather than one night, one event.
Well, you are a trooper for doing that, because I know that there's a lot of above and beyond that goes on, and that you're still at this point in the year thinking, oh, well, I have to dig in and do 5 nights. That's admirable. So great to hear your ideas and your enthusiasm, and good to get a middle school perspective. I quickly checked the chat and I did not see any questions for you. So you, ma'am, are also off the hook. Thank you for joining us. I appreciate you. All right, so our next principal is Valerie Bogan, and Valerie is the principal at Kalamazoo Central High School. And I thought it would be good to have kind of a perspective from an urban school as well, because Valerie's students have not been face-to-face this year. And I think that also kind of changes kind of the view of what you're thinking might be moving into your year-end events. That's just got to be so challenging, not having the ability, especially even just thinking about your freshmen who have never, fully been in Kalamazoo Central and gotten the energy of what it's like to be a giant. So Val, I'm going to just let you take it away. I see your screen's up.
Thank you.
Screen.
So okay. I will try to speak briefly about what's happening at Kalamazoo Central, what we did last year, how we plan to do some things just a little bit differently. We have around 1,750 students who attend our school. Last year, we graduated 330 plus seniors. So I believe we started to celebrate them in March as soon as we learned that we were not coming back to school. That was a lot for us to do. And so you can, they're just random pictures, so you can just share some of the pictures. So our commencement was a combination of pre-recorded. So we pre-recorded all of the senior speeches, all of the adult speeches. And then we had families come in and we divided it by the alpha. And we had families come in, we marked off the parking lot, we marked off how families moved along the fence outside. We held it on the football field. If you want to go through some of the pictures, Angie, because it kind of shows that, well, you know, I'm gonna go backwards. So I'll go with the pictures. We have giant prints. We're gonna go back to that one, sorry. Giant Prints is our school newsletter. And so we asked for seniors to send in their senior blurb. So they would send in a picture and then we asked them to answer 4 questions. And then we put that into the giant prints. If you want to go to the next picture.
That's beautiful.
So this is our senior blurb. When the seniors shared the information, then we put to the giant prints, which is an electronic newsletter that we send out once a week. We do a special senior edition. We also use this senior blurb to put on our social media platforms so that parents could see their kids. What we learned is that we notified the student that their senior blurb, we sent it back to them. So we put it together in a JPEG, sent it back to the senior, informed them that it would be on our social media within the next 3 to 5 days. Please make sure you check it out, share it with your friends and like it. So we found that if we didn't do that, we didn't always get people looking at the social media, but when kids had their picture to send out to their friends. And again, all we did was put together what they already sent us. So that was one thing that we do. In Giant Prints, we ask for seniors and just students in general to send us something positive. We call it Giant Positivity. So send us something positive, artwork, your own poetry, a quote that you like. We ask our parents to send it. So we either will put Casey World Changer, which is what we refer to our students as world changers, or a life changer, or a member of our giant nation. And so that's something common that we put on social media as well as Giant Prints. We did a virtual signing day. So we asked for all of our athletes who were signing to create a video. So they created a 1-minute video at home. We put that together and then we had a virtual signing day. We announced it on Facebook and then we uploaded the video to Facebook, asked everyone to watch it at the same time. This is our cap and gown and yard sign distribution. So families picked up their caps and gowns. We also created yard signs for all of our seniors. They picked up any awards and any medals that we had and their cords. So all of that was done before we started our first senior awards program. We also, in preparation for commencement, we had a virtual courting day and we had a virtual passing of the torch. So on the virtual, we basically had everyone join us on a Google Meet. We asked for them to keep their cameras off until it was their time to put their cord on. When we called their name and they had the list, so then it was in alphabetical order. Then they would turn their camera on and their parents would either place their cord on them or they would place it on themselves. This year, because we can have some in-person, even though KPS has remained virtual, we're going to do an in-person courting ceremony. So we'll have families come in, much like we did for graduation. They'll come into our auditorium, which is our traditional way of doing it. We'll have all the balloons and the decorations. So we bring balloons and we have streamers hanging down from the ceiling. It's a really beautiful scene. And we had cocktail tables in the past. So we'll have packaged food for them to take, just like cookies or something like that. And we'll do our courting ceremony That way, by that time, I will have had my second vaccine, and we'll have limited staff, but we'll have our families come in, so at least they can have that face-to-face, because our seniors, unlike the class of 2020, who had 2 trimesters in our building, these kiddos have not had 1 trimester in their senior year. So we are also creating a senior picture day. So that's going to this year. We're going to allow seniors to come in and just have their way in the building. We'll allow them to come in small groups and let them take pictures, you know, those senior moments that they want to have to take pictures. We've created virtual, well, we do our Winter Fest. We did homecoming this year. We recorded it live on Facebook. We'll do the same thing again for Winter Fest, and then we'll have a virtual Winter Fest dance. We had a virtual Christmas dance that went well. We had like over 200 kids attend the virtual Christmas dance. It was pretty cool. Of course, they were mostly freshmen, but we actually had a lot of seniors show up too. So that was really cool. We do an influential educators. So we ask for our seniors to choose influential educators. And so they can choose it on a Google form. Then we copy and paste any comments and we send it back to the teachers so that the teachers know. We pick the top influential educators and we give them a special little plaque. But then all of the teachers get the comments that students said about them, and they really love that. In years past, we have them write a letter, and we put all of those letters into envelopes, and we spell out custodians, secretary, principal, assistant principal, teachers, counselors, so that they know that they're open to invite that letter to anyone. We also, historically, we had them write to a previous teacher or someone that they wanted, a teacher or educator, didn't have to be a teacher, to participate in the commencement ceremony. So at Kalamazoo Central, when I was at Lori Norris, this is a big deal for us at Norris, and all of our staff participated in commencement. It's not a big tradition at Kalamazoo Central, and I haven't been able to get people to buy into it the same way. So when we invited other educators, it really boosted up the number for our own educators to want to be a part of it. So it's great. We are going to see if we can get seniors to go to do drive-bys through the middle schools. Typically they go into the middle schools. So we're working on some creative things for senior celebrations this year that just depends on what the governor's saying and what we can do. We do a video award for senior awards. So seniors send in their pictures, and then we put their name with all of the awards that they received, and we share that. We upload it to YouTube, and then we ask everybody to share, to watch it with us. We put it on our Facebook page, like at 7 o'clock. I think that's it. I could go on and on about the little things that we're trying to do, but we did do senior parent meetings, and that was really important. We're having those parent meetings again, and we're doing virtual open house for our students.
Valerie, you shared some really awesome ideas. I particularly liked your virtual signing day and having each student make the 1-minute video and watching it, you know, contiguously at the same time. I think that was genius. That was really great. And also about your the courting ceremony. I think that's really neat how they turned on their camera when their name was called, and then their parent or, you know, whoever was with them kind of awarded the cord. So I think that was a really cool idea. Someone asked about the senior blurbs that you do. I think you called them giant something. What did you call those? Giant prints.
They're senior blurbs, and they go into our giant print. So giant prints is our electronic school newsletter.
Okay. So the blurbs, what questions did you ask? Can you post those questions maybe in the chat?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it was very simple.
And so all of those then just go into the giant prints, the newsletter, right? At the same time? Because she was asking what, you know, how frequently did you post them? They were all in at one time, right?
So we do a senior edition.
Okay.
And so the senior edition, historically, we put the senior blurbs and prom pictures in there. And it's just basically their own online they can keep forever picture show gallery. And last year, because our seniors were struggling so much, we did them as they came in. So since we publish our giant prints once a week, then we tried to send that out once a week, and then we put it on social media.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Many great ideas. Really appreciate you joining us and sharing today, Val. Awesome job. All right, so our next up is Steve Carlson, who's the principal at Sandusky Junior Senior High School. And Steve has a little bit of a unique situation, being in a smaller district than his predecessors who were just sharing. So maybe things might look a little bit different at a junior senior high school, and you might have some different events to share.
And before I share anything, I got to remember how to unmute, right, Wendy?
I was hoping that was the problem, so I'm glad.
Oh, goodness. Depends on the day what my problem is. Wendy, thanks for the invitation to be here. Secretaries, administrative assistants, thank you for being here. Thanks for all you do. And thanks for giving up some time to learn with us and do what you can on behalf of your staffs and most importantly your students, because undoubtedly there's work piling up on your desks and your email boxes right now. So it's awesome that you're making this time. And like the others before me, I mean, I just got sticky notes galore over here with the ideas that I'm stealing. If one person finds one thing that that's worth sharing or worth stealing from us, then I'll feel like my time was well spent. But what a powerful panel. Yes, like Wendy said, my school setting is different than all that have come before me. We're a 712 school. I think Valerie was talking about graduating 330 students. I don't have 300 students in the high school part of my building. We're about 460 students, 712. So going back to Bob talking about our epidemiology orders and where we're at right now, one of the blessings I had last year, we were graduating 52 seniors. Now that's a small class for us. This year we're looking to graduate. It's about 73, I think, that we're hoping across the finish line. And that's much more typical. But last year with about 50, we had, we were able to use that to our advantage because we just don't simply have the scale of numbers. And I suspect that many of you are from schools, Class B, Class C, Class D high schools that maybe have some smaller numbers to play with. I think it was Amy that spoke earlier about you want to make sure you're honoring your students in the way that you always have in the past. And that was certainly our mindset when we got to spring last year. But also recognizing that, our seniors didn't get to have that traditional last day in the school. They didn't, I usually walk around with boxes of Kleenex when the seniors dismiss because there's so many tears and hugs in the hallways, and they lost out on that. So one, I'll say easy thing, because our college advisor came to me and offered to do this. So easy for me was to give them something new, was a senior spotlight. Larissa Anton, one of my favorite students ever. She was one of our valedictorians last year and just happens to be first alphabetically in last year's graduating class. So you're going to see her showcased with some of our stuff. And this was simply a template that our college advisor had gotten from one of her networks. And she just went through and used information provided by the students. Now, typically we would have all this information anyway. We gathered it, in this case, through Google form. That just was an easy way for us to go about it. And then made a few phone calls to parents for some of the stragglers to say, hey, if your son or daughter doesn't get this to us, they're going to miss out on this. And what we did here with our senior spotlight, we, again, with smaller numbers, we were able to give each student sort of more of their own time in the spotlight. But we just used our Facebook page and we used the scheduling feature. And we did 5 kids a day over a 10-day period, 2 Monday through Friday periods leading up to our graduation. And we let the students know what time their single unique post would go out. I think we did them at something like 8:30, 10:30, 12:30, and so on. And they got tons of views. If any of you are running or help to run your social media, you know how your phone just starts blowing up. Well, we just got like the 99 for notifications on ours every time that we did it. And again, I thought something that might be beneficial is, who did this for us? And for us, this was our college advisor. I wouldn't have to be your college advisor, but this was a relatively simple thing we did found an online template, information provided by the students, and the pictures you see in almost every case was the picture that they had already submitted to our yearbook coordinator. Next, again, in keeping with the notion of we wanted to honor the students in the ways that we traditionally had done previous to COVID, we had two big end of year activities. Of course, there's commencement, and then there was our senior awards night. And with things being the way they were then, we just didn't know at all if any of this would be possible in person. So we wanted to sort of combine those two events into a virtual event that was held on our originally scheduled graduation day. Here in Sanilac County, the schools all graduate a lot earlier than in some of the other areas. And so we, I think to a school in the county, we graduate the week before Memorial Day. So this labor of love was a collaboration with my office and our counseling office. Again, we used information that the students had already provided to us. Again, you see my friend Larissa here. That's the picture she submitted for yearbook. It's got her parent information on there. And here on this first slide, we just shared some of the activities that she was involved in. And then for the second slide, we had the seniors send us a picture of them with their diploma. We won't do that this way this year. This year, barring the unforeseen, we'll be able to have some form of an in-person ceremony. But what we did last year, we had a little event, and I probably should have put pictures of it together, where the kids came and picked up their cap and gowns, and we gave them their diplomas on the day they picked up their cap and gown, and then asked them to put the cap and gown on, all the regalia. You can see Larissa's valedictorian medal among her other bling there, and pose with a picture of their diploma. Here on this slide, you can see off to the right, it may be hard to see depending on how large your screen is. And again, with Larissa and the amazing student she has a lot of awards. Typically at our senior awards night, which would be a separate night from commencement, we would bring in members of our community, bring in our staff, and we would give departmental awards. We would acknowledge Val and Sal, we acknowledge senior scholars, local scholarships, and also any scholarships that they have won from either state or national organizations, and including their individual college and universities. So what you saw on our virtual graduation video, whoops, I'm going the wrong way. Each student had 2 slides. This was slide 1, sort of introducing who they were, who their parents are, activities they were involved in. And then as the slide transitioned, it changed to a picture of them with their diploma, and making note of the different accolades that they had. And then you can even see down in italics what their future plans were. So these 2 slides sort of in our minds sought to combine elements of both the senior awards night and the commencement. But when it came to our commencement itself, just like every other school, our commencement is a very tradition-based ceremony that has elements that I don't want to say they're uniquely Sandusky's, but you know, this is how Sandusky does commencement. So what we did here was we put together a video, and with the number of students we have, it ends up being about 31 minutes. I don't think anyone wants to jot that URL down for YouTube, but I'm going to put the link to my slides in the chat so you can see this later. And if you want to watch our video, you're more than welcome to. I think it has about 1,400 views when I saw it this morning. Our typical graduation might only bring 300 to 400 people into the gym. So just an example of, you know, making lemonade out of lemons, you know, about 3 or 4 times as many people saw our graduation that we did virtually last year, as opposed to what would come in the gym. This was a collaboration with student leaders of the class of 2020 and my office. I was able to Zoom with them and talk about, and these student leaders, a lot of them overlapped with Vals and Sals. I think we had 4 valedictorians last year. But in addition to those students who typically would be showcased at our commencement, I invited in NHS leaders and student council leaders to get their input as well. What you see in bullet points on your screen, these are the elements of a typical Sandusky commencement. So we just did the very best job that we could to put together a virtual commencement that looked something like this. It was completely asynchronous. Again, this was done with the goal, which we achieved, of being able to post it to our social media at 2 p.m. on the Sunday of the originally scheduled graduation. Parents had, we declined to put together a parade because we didn't feel like we could do that and ensure social distancing, but parents didn't care. So parents did their own parade, and they scheduled it so that it didn't start until after this video had been posted to social media and had the chance to play. And again, when you're looking to who did this, a big bulk of what you'd see in this video, if you choose to watch, would be those slides that I shared earlier, each kid getting their own unique slide. But we have the recorded Val speeches, the recorded Sal speeches. You see a short commencement from me, an introduction from our board president, students sending pictures of them doing a cap toss. So it turned into a really neat event. When it comes to what we're planning for this year, my contact information, if anyone wants to reach out to me past this. You know, Jen was our first principal to present. She had twins in the class of 2020. Well, I have a student in the class of 2021. So I also kind of get to view through that lens of the parent. And in fact, one of our two senior advisors, she also has a student in the senior class. So we're certain to hit all the marks that parents are expecting us to hit this year, being that two of the parents of the class of 2021 are planning the event. We were able last year to do a late June outdoor ceremony. And so right now we anticipate that we will do an outdoor ceremony. We actually meet with our seniors tomorrow to disclose this information to them. We feel like we do commencement really well in a gym. And if any of you have ever been to Sandusky, you know our gym seats more people than our football field does. So it kind of creates a unique situation where, depending on where orders end up in mid-late May, we might be able to meet our demand by having it back in the gym. But right now we're going to plan to have it on it'd be the Saturday before Memorial, or 2 Saturdays before Memorial, the Saturday before Memorial Day weekend, excuse me, with the Sunday, the day after, being held in reserve for inclement weather. And again, even if we had to do it now with the current orders right now, we think we could get most of the families accommodated with what their request would be. But again, we're a smaller school, so that plays into our favor here. We liked combining elements of the awards night into commencement. So rather than try to have two events, both outdoors, both dependent on good weather, you have to have contingencies for both. We will combine elements of our senior awards assembly into our commencement again. And that's what we got. So I'll stop sharing. And if there's no questions, if there are questions, I'm happy to answer. If not, I'll put the link to my slides in the chat.
That's awesome, Steve. Thank you for sharing that, and for kind of just walking people through your process. And you're right. It does make a difference when you're in a smaller school. It provides you, more options to be able to make it work. So that's awesome. And I appreciate you taking the time and sharing with us today. So next, we are moving from the thumb of Sandusky up north to Joe Esper, who is at Traverse City West. And we have two big high schools in Traverse City. So one of my questions for you, Joe, is do you coordinate or have similar activities as what's that other high school called in Traverse City? Joe, you have to unmute.
There we go. My little toolbar hides up at the top when you go into presenting mode. The other high school in Traverse City, I don't recall. They beat us in basketball last night, though, on the boys' side, which was disheartening. So,
do you do similar activities, or do you kind of get your own autonomy?
No, well, we could have our own autonomy. So so in Traverse City, which Wendy said is kind of in the pinky of Michigan, in the city itself, we have two big high schools. I'm at West. Central is the other big high school in town, and we talked pretty much daily through March, April, and May, mostly about these events, because especially in for any of you that are a community with more than one high school, neighborhoods overlap and parent groups overlap, and if one side of town comes up with a great idea, and the other side of town isn't aware of it, that other side's gonna going to hear about it. And even more so, like there's going to be seniors on one side of town that got something cool that the other side could have. It's not a competition. It's definitely a collaboration. And I would say even just outside of our two big high schools in Traverse City, regionally up here, our intermediate school district is about 17 high schools. And that group, which we didn't do this before, we met like weekly through that period and kind of calibrated about where we were on events. So just a little bit of detail about West Senior High. Like Wendy said, we're in Northwest Lower Michigan. We're a Class A high school. We have about 1,650 students this year. About 1,480 of our students are face-to-face. The rest are doing some combination of our virtual programming. But it's, I don't know if you'd call Traverse City's district rural, but it's large. Like we pull kids to this school from over 300 square miles. And we did figure that out. One of the things we did last spring was drive around and deliver yard signs and some cool things to each of the seniors. And we do get a lot of school of choice kids in this region. And I literally found we have kids that would drive over an hour each way to school every day to come to our high school. So it was really interesting to see the dedication some of the kids had to being here. So, and in terms of our school year this year, when you hear us talking about things we're doing, we've had the benefit of being mostly face-to-face. And when I say face-to-face, like our plan is we're 5 days a week with 100% of the kids in the building, which we were, had some trepidation about, but for the most part has gone really well. And then we're offering some synchronous virtual options and some on-demand virtual options. And the little attendance graph is just that, how much we've been in face-to-face outside of the kind of the 2-month shutdown that I think most high schools experienced. We've been able to be face-to-face. So I'll just kind of like quickly go through what we did kind of in emergency mode last spring and over the summer. That's what I call kind of the 2020 events, and then what we're looking at for 2021. I'll try to skip things that are overlap with what the other principals talked about and just add the things that are kind of nuances. So this slide here is clearly not from last year. Bunch of kids smiling without masks on, like we all long for those days again. This is what our graduation in Traverse City usually looks like, and actually both high schools at different times on the same day. We go to the same facility at Interlochen Center of the Arts, which is just kind of south of Traverse City. And we love our graduation. It was even going on back when it was one high school. Kids get their diploma in kind of this outdoor amphitheater. They get their pictures down by Green Lake. It's super cool. So, on the one, this came into our thinking last year because we wanted graduation to be super special, but we also didn't want to pretend that we were able to give those seniors the usual thing and make it kind of contrived. I think Steve was saying like there's so many like traditions wrapped into his graduation. There are with ours too. So like we even made like a point of last year, we didn't call what the seniors had graduation. We just called it a diploma presentation and a senior walk, because many of them had parents that have gone through that Traverse City graduation, and we knew those kids, we just couldn't give them some of those things. So when we kind of, we've kind of settled on as like a menu for formats for events when we're considering each event are kind of this continuum of options. Pretty obvious stuff here, and which option we pick from these different formats is just based on what the gathering restrictions are at the time. So there's obviously doing a whatever event it is, whether it's graduation or prom or something else, doing it traditionally live. Pretty much nothing has been possible with the gathering restrictions since March. We can do different versions of it, but not traditionally. Live with all the participants distanced and outdoors would be kind of the next best option. Live, but doing things staggered, like in waves. I should mention, like with our 1,650 kids, we usually graduate about 400, right around 400. Last year was just under. So that's about the number of kids we're trying to get through if we're having a ceremony. So right there, we're already over the 100-person limit. Or we can do things live with just students all at the same time, and stream it for parents or other people that might want to see it, or we can pre-record things and make a true virtual package for whatever event it is. So kind of a quick rundown of our events in 2020 and our events now. I like to talk of 2020 like it was a long time ago. It seemed much more nightmarish. I feel like we're still in a crazy time now, but I think like all of us having a run through some of this stuff, we feel like we have a little more control this year. And I think that's, why we're having this webinar, is like we feel like we can plan a little more this year, even if we don't know exactly what restrictions are going to be like in May or June. We know like what we can plan for each possibility of what those restrictions might be. So last year, yeah, we did not do a graduation ceremony. We're adamant that it was not graduation because we could not do our traditional TCAPS graduation traditions. So we did a senior walkthrough, diploma pickup, and did a lot of other senior surprises. So that culminating thing, the walkthrough for us, was we brought seniors to campus where we do graduation. Obviously, Interlochen is not on our campus. We brought seniors to campus, and they signed up like we sign up for parent-teacher conferences. So my assistant, Tammy Brunin, who's outstanding and made all this work last year, she just set it up like we do for parent-teacher conference nights, where people can get on and grab 5-minute slots. So seniors picked their slots. If they wanted to come with friends, they'd call around and be like, are you going at 2? Okay, I'll pick 2:05. So they had some discretion over it. We had originally thought about just going alphabetically, but we let them pick, so they could be by their friends. And they would get, our school is kind of like encircled by this driveway. So they'd get dropped off by their family on one side of school. They'd go into school with their full graduation stuff on. They walked through the school, and we had lined it with tables with trophies and robots and instruments and things that were kind of like artifacts from their high school experience. And then we had teachers staggered throughout the building and distanced, talking to kids and waving to kids. So they would do this long walk. It probably took each kid 12 or 15 minutes to walk through the school. And then they would end in the small gym where I was, and I would give them their diploma. And so now they've ended up on the opposite side of the building, right by the parking lot. So parents, we would kind of call out the name of the next kid that was coming up, and they popped into the gym. They took pictures of their kids getting their diploma. They'd walk out the door with their parents and get in the car and leave. And we just did that for, it was like 7 or 8 hours to get all the kids through. But they loved it. It wasn't, like I said, the normal thing, but they loved it. For our senior awards, like our honors convocation kind of thing, we decided by I don't know, probably about Easter time, that we needed to just go virtual with that. There was no way we were going to be able to get 500 people in the auditorium, obviously. So we did the standard thing with that, a lot of similar things to what Sandusky did. We had teachers kind of pre-record the speeches they would do. We worked with our media guy to kind of make slides for each senior that got a special award. And then we had like a release night, and we put that on at a specific time. And we've already decided that we're doing honors convocation the exact same way this year. Because, as you would expect, like there were parents that were upset about not being able to do graduation. There were a lot of people upset about prom, but nobody complained about us doing honors convocation virtually. And I don't know if it's because there's those parents that have had older siblings at our school, and that can be like a 2.5, 3-hour night in our auditorium for a normal honors convocation ceremony. But like the feedback on a virtual honors convocation was overwhelming. So we are going to do it again this year. And when we are post-pandemic, there's a possibility we may just do honors convocation like that forever. I've already talked to this year's seniors about it, and they're like, yeah, that sounds fine, no problem. They're really worried about prom. They're worried about graduation. They're not put off at all about a virtual honors convocation. Obviously, no spring sports last year, no prom. And then as we moved into 2020, we were able to successfully have fall sports up here, like most of the state, and marching band and band camp and things like that. And kids were great about masks and distancing and limited spectators and things like that. For our fall sports that did happen, we told folks they couldn't have any banquets. So it's like we really stuck to like, what experiences do we want kids to have that they can never get back, and what things are kind of optional that aren't going to like diminish their experience if they don't have. So things like banquets, which are fun, but it's maybe not essential, like the actual cross country season or volleyball season or football season. We told people no on that. And of course, then you get parent groups that just do things rogue off campus. And we've had at least 2 instances where like those off campus fake banquet type things have led to COVID spreading and quarantines of kids, which just reinforced why we're not endorsing those or organizing those as a school. We did no parent meetings, so our traditional end of the year meetings and freshman transition meetings and things like that, none of that happened last year. But we did do a number of senior recognitions. I'll show you those in a second. And what's my other thing here under the little, I can't see it. Okay, and then so this year, as we look at 2021, what we're thinking for graduation is, we have not put this out to our parents yet, but I've started to talk to some senior leaders about this. Like, we plan to go to Interlochen no matter what, and we're going to graduate on, I think it's June 6th, whatever the date is. We're going to stick to that date no matter what. We're not planning to reschedule in July or August if things get kicked a little bit. But what we're going to tell them is, we're going to do graduation on that date. And then depending on the gathering restrictions, we're going to do the least restrictive thing we can do. And then we'll describe what those are. Like, we don't think we can do normal graduation, which is 400 graduates and 3,000 spectators. But we might be able to do something where the graduates come in waves of 100 with a parent or two, if the gathering restrictions get up to like 500 or so by June. We may be able to do something where we can get all 400 graduates and live stream it for the parents. Or we may have to do something like we did last year, where they pick an appointment and they kind of come in one at a time and rotate through and just get their photo op. But we've decided we're going back to Interlochen, and we're doing that. And it's just a matter of what format we'll use based on the gathering restrictions. Senior awards, honors convocation, like I said, that will be virtual. For parent meetings, we've gone to more of a pre-recorded thing. So last week I did our usual 8th and the 9th grade freshman parent information night. In between watching it live and the recording, we had about 160 people jump on for that, which is about normal, what we would get in the auditorium. But we've kind of gone to that mode with that. And it's actually been, it was a tool that we didn't use before. It was kind of like, you come in person if you were available, and if you weren't, you got a flyer. Kind of like Wendy was mentioning with some other things, that's probably one that we'll continue to do after the pandemic. It wasn't really a tool we used before, but it's so simple to, record your events and record slides with your events. And we figured out simple stuff like, when you post your video on YouTube, you can go in the description and you can type in like 3 minutes and 12 seconds, and it makes little bookmarks in your YouTube presentation. So it's like a super easy index you can send out to parents afterwards. Like, if you want to watch the 90 seconds about honors classes, go to 325. If you want to watch the stuff about course requests, go to 1422. Concerts and performances have really been a struggle. We're a huge music school at West. I would say both high schools and TCAPs. Our numbers in the music programs and the theater program have remained high, but it's been super frustrating for those kids, because theater and each of the music programs has kind of recorded one concert so far, no audience, recorded it during the school day and posted it. And it's just not the same thing. Like, those kids put in a ton of work, and they don't really get to game day like sports have been able to. Our band director and some of the other folks are working on, again, like a continuum of options. They want to do some outdoor concerts when it warms up in the spring, which for us is like not till Memorial Day. But they're going to plan some things, if it's like 100 people outdoors, if it's 500, different places we can go, and try to give those kids, especially the seniors, something to look forward to in the spring. We've done 0 dances or assemblies. That's also one I would love to never go back to after COVID. It's helping us reassess, like, if dances are even part of the essential function of what a high school does. But prom, of course, is the big one we're still debating. When you listen to what Bob was talking about before, under the current gathering restrictions, there's no way you can have a prom. But as I've met with senior leaders, not every senior cares about prom, but the ones that do care about prom, it's like they may care about it more than graduation. So, we're looking at different alternatives for prom. I wrote down a lot of notes about what Jen Bustard was talking about with their gala. That might be an alternate we can look at if we can't have a normal prom this year. Winter sports have been going on with very limited family spectators. That's working well. People are starting to transition more to like alternate banquets after their different activities finish. We've done some alternate signing day stuff. I think it might have been Val. I wrote down a few signing day ideas that we might steal as well. But we haven't allowed kids to gather for signing days, or even with masks on, having large groups of people like that might be over 10 people from 2 different houses. Even little things like trying to make sure there's equity between our different programs too, on expectations for things like pictures, So like all of our sports teams take pictures every year. Our musical kids take pictures for the musical program and for the different theater performances we do, which is usually 3 a year. So like under our school COVID plan, those things haven't been allowed this year. So when conditions get good enough, we let kids outdoors take individual pictures with a photographer, and then they put it together in like a composite with all the kids in a grid, but no team pictures all together. And then of course, there's been times where like parents will get the entire team together off campus and take team pictures, and then another sport is upset because they don't have a team picture. And again, that equity piece is huge. And like Wendy asked at the beginning, that's not just within programs at West, but because we have another big high school in Traverse City, I talk to that principal all the time. And when we really try to make sure that none of our groups don't know about those rules or break those rules, because it creates pressure for both sides of town then. And I'll give you some examples in a second of senior recognitions, but similar to what Amy was talking about with her transition of middle school kids, we're trying to rework freshman transition right now. And the one thing we can't do is tours. Like what we would normally do in February is bring all of the potential 8th graders that might go to our high school into the building for a half day and walk them around and have them talk to kids and see class in session. And that's the one thing we really haven't been able to replicate in this virtual environment that we wish we could, because I think in Northern Michigan, we're one of the bigger high schools. And so that's one thing that kind of intimidates kids. Like, is it a big school? Will I get lost? You know, will I be able to find the door and get home at the end of the day? And like, once they come here, they realize it's okay and it's organized and it makes sense, and that anxiety drops, but we haven't been able to do that. So our plan on tours is like, we are, Tammy, my assistant, has put dates on the public calendar for May. So like, here's an after school day on a Tuesday in May, here's a Saturday morning in May, different dates that will let people sign up and come and do tours, hoping the gathering restrictions are better in May. And if they're not, then we're going to push it to June and then July and then August, but still try to give people those opportunities to get in and see the building before school starts. So the last thing I'll talk about before I show you a couple examples is just in terms of communication tools we've used. Again, it seems like it's all Tammy and I have worked on since March. But as we've gone through this COVID thing, there's definitely things we use less, and there's things we've started using more that we didn't use before. So the things we use less is actually our school website, because it tends to be static information. We're still going through and just kind of like taking down pages that don't apply anymore. There's so much content on our website, and so little of it is accurate right now because of COVID. We're just trying to like take very little off there. If anything, the website kind of links to our weekly communications, but otherwise we're taking a lot off the website. We're sending less text messages, less mailings, less of our general info and newsletters. And we're not having teachers send weekly updates anymore, which we did last spring. We found parents were just overwhelmed, especially if you have 2 or 3 kids in school with different teachers. They were just getting so many emails. And the other thing we're doing less of that we tried last spring was just like when we have an event, inviting everyone to a Zoom call or everyone to a Google Meet. Kind of like you can see all the participants today over here on the side when you're not like in a webinar mode. You know, we did an NHS induction. It was either late last year or early this year on Zoom, and it went fine, but you know, grandparents joined in and stuff. They don't understand how to use the technology. They're having a conversation and they can't mute their mic the whole time while we're trying to talk about kids, and people on another, you know, in another house are trying to give them directions on how to do it. It's just awkward. So that's why what we're doing more of is doing more like making videos and short presentations. Very little of that stuff we realized needed to be live. Like one of the other presenters mentioned was like having kids pre-record a minute video for signing day and then you merge it into a video. There's very little reason it needs to be live, and also gives that kid or that teacher or whoever's talking, if they don't like how it came off, they can do another take and send you their best take, you know, so you get a quality product that you put on at the end. But we actually do use video for more stuff now because we're trying to personalize more. I was the kind of high school principal. I was a sarcastic social studies teacher when I taught the high school level. So like, I did not like doing videos before COVID. I thought it was very hokey, but I did kind of learn that going through the senior process last spring, because, you know, especially when we announced like, hey, we can't have graduation interlock, we can't have prom. There were definitely, you know, we sent that out like in letters, and there were parents that felt like that was cold. And even though we had involved the kids a lot in that decision-making process, it just didn't come off well. So I think even giving the same information like in a video, you know, you could show empathy and you can explain the situation and show some compassion. So we do a lot more with video than we did before. a lot more with email and social media. Google Docs, everything we put out now, I try to send a link to a Google Doc versus pasting stuff into an email or putting stuff on a website, because with stuff changing so frequently, if a time has to adjust or a date has to adjust and 500 people haven't seen it yet, we'll just go and change the Google Doc and everybody sees it, you know. And we did do a lot with surveys. A tip that worked really well for us too was, like, if you do a survey, share the results out, because remember, parents tend to think like whatever they think, they think that emphatically, and they assume everyone else thinks like them. So like some of the decisions we made about not delaying graduation to August and stuff like that, when they saw like only 2% of seniors actually wanted to consider waiting till August, it was easier for them to digest that, because until they see that data, they assume everyone wants what they want. So these are just some of the examples of senior recognitions we did. Like, so even with 400 seniors, we timed it out last spring and we did a recognition for every single senior on social media that they could share. And that personalization piece to our athletic director, who was looking for things to do when spring sports were canceled, he came up with this great idea. He got with every staff person and did like a little interview of questions. And every staff person posted like a little like bio, what are you doing during COVID? What do you miss? On our social media, which was a great way to kind of personalize our staff and try to maintain some of that human connection. And then these are some of the recognitions we've done so far this school year. This is like an example of a composite photo. Athletic department again did a profile of each senior that was playing sports, and the music department is kind of doing a profile of each senior that's been in a music program. So that's kind of ours.
Holy cow, Joe. I mean, unbelievable. You've done a lot of things and really good ideas as well. And one of the things that you said that really struck me, that I think sometimes wording makes a difference. And when you talked about diploma presentation versus graduation, I think it kind of like helps to explain the situation. Like, yep, we know it's not the same. We know this is different and this is what it is. And I think that was actually a really interesting decision.
Yeah. And then, then we asked, don't compare the two then. Like, we're just going to admit it's not the same. So enjoy it for what it is and don't worry about what it can't be.
Right. It's kind of like Jen Bustard calling it a gala rather than prom, because we know it's not prom, but we're trying to give you something else, So great job. I really appreciate you. And our last presenter, but certainly not least, is Katie Pennington, who's the principal at Holland High School. And I really hunted down Katie to do this because I was watching her commencement last year, and kind of like just on social media, I'd seen posts about it, and they had done some really interesting things. So I thought that would be helpful to everybody to share.
I have some big shoes to fill. I got a ton of ideas from my colleagues there. I also want to recognize my own assistant, Nancy Horgan, who is on this call. She is integral to everything I'm showing you. Like, this was a team of people. It's always a team of people who pulls off, an event like this. And last year that team had to be smaller because of COVID-19. And not surprisingly, Nancy was still a member of that very small team. If we get to questions that are specific to the commencement packet pickup, she truly is maybe a better person to answer those questions than I am. So I'm not going to go through every slide. I've already put the link to this slideshow in the chat, so feel free to access it, copy it, use it, adapt it for what you want. But this is our graduation rehearsal. We wanted to make sure our community, our families, and our students understood what was expected of them, what to expect as an attendee at commencement last year. We worked really closely with Dr. Paul Heidel from Ottawa County Department of Public Health at every step of the way, because I think you guys all remember that as events unfolded, we almost got weekly updates that changed things. In fact, as I recall, our commencement was Monday, June 1st, and Governor Whitmer had a press conference that slightly changed gathering orders on Monday, June 1st at 3 p.m. And I was in a panic because I'm thinking to myself, if she opens everything up and we've got this event in 4 hours that's for the old order, we're going to get some complaints. So I always started any kind of a parent meeting or communication with why, just reminding them this is not just us being the bad guys, this is where we are. This social distancing slide was absolutely from Dr. Heidel at the health department, and we really didn't have any problems. I think we were all crossing our fingers that we wouldn't have like rogue attendees that just refused to comply with anything. We didn't. I don't know if this slide helped, but it didn't hurt. I referenced earlier the senior packet pickup. Like all of my colleagues, we tried to fold in or somehow otherwise recognize all of the awards, scholarships, recognitions that we would normally do in an honors convocation. We folded it into one big event, and we did call it commencement. So what that meant was June 1st was kind of a chaotic, busy mess. Senior packet pickup was a standalone event, and at that event, people picked up all of this stuff. They drove through in their cars. I have some photos of all of this after I kind of speed through the slideshow. But literally they picked up, I mean, there were several stops. Our school has an oval drive in front of it, and every foot of that oval drive was a different stop. The class of 2020 gift was a nice fleece blanket for everyone. Snacks for the ceremony was a bag with popcorn, water, cookies, and it had Holland stickers on it. Any attempt to make this fun and kind of its own fun new event was what we went for. Loud music, tents, balloons, staff members cheering. It was really a lot of fun. And quite honestly, I was jealous I couldn't be there because I was downtown at the Civic Center getting ready for commencement. You'll notice the diploma was part of the packet that was picked up. So if you're wondering, like, why would anyone even show up to commencement if they have their diploma? You know what? You didn't have to. Like, this was totally your choice. Most of our students, almost all of our students did. But if they didn't want to, they already had the goods. So we did ask them to bring their diploma because when they participated in commencement, and I'll kind of show you how that looks, they kind of needed it for the photo op. I'm going to exit out of the slideshow just for a minute to show you this windshield placard. So I've already mentioned that we were not on any kind of school property for our event. We are very fortunate to live in a downtown community that is frankly gorgeous. Our Holland Civic Center is also the home to our farmers market. It's a beautiful building. The parking lot is actually what we used. We didn't use any part of the interior of the building. We just used the parking lot. And the infrastructure that the building had that was useful to us were a lot of ability to stream both video and sound. So our next kind of quandary was, how do we limit people from accessing this very public space? We're fortunate that the Holland Civic Center shut the parking lot down to the public the night before. And we had staff members starting mid-afternoon kind of manning each of the stations. And around 5:30, I think, is when cars could have started coming in. Each car had to have this on their windshield. So we wanted to make sure it wasn't something easily photocopied. So yes, everyone had their own last name printed there where it says last name. And then we had some reminders, just kind of last minute reminders for the event itself. You can see we had radio feed for the event, both in English and Spanish. We also had a video live stream on our school's, I believe it was a Facebook Live Facebook feed. So we had attendees from all over the country, quite honestly. How do we always want to make sure our graduates attend graduation rehearsal, and with a virtual graduation rehearsal meeting, we wanted to make sure we still had this. So we had parents and students. We needed a parent or a student from each family complete this Google form. I won't click on it, but it is a live link in the presentation that I shared so you can see it. And then we truly walked them through, this is what you need to know to access this event. We know it's different. So we had all sorts of maps and just made sure that people didn't have any anxiety about what to expect. We thought over communicating was better than under communicating. Every graduate, with the permission of the health department, was able to have a professional photograph taken with their diploma without their mask on. So you can kind of see, we've got the star where the photographer was standing and all of that good stuff. I've already mentioned a lot of this, live streaming, radio broadcasts. We did have professional photographers, and as I scroll through some of the photographs, you'll see some of them like getting real good candid pictures of kids, and then a DVD. You might be wondering how, this is more just social distancing stuff, another reminder about completing that Google form. We anticipated some of these questions. Some of them are great answers that were well received, and others were like, we get it. We know you can't really do much about that. I'm glad my email address is in here, because as you think of questions, feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to help with this, or if there's a link in here that doesn't work or you can't access, please let me know. Secret here, everybody who asked for more than one car was approved. We were fortunate that we didn't have to limit that. We knew how many spaces the Civic Center held. And I think I had one family that needed 3 cars. We also had students with special situations, our cognitively impaired and autistic students. We really needed, and we had a couple of families that needed wheelchair access to a restroom, those types of things. All of those people emailed me, and we just made special note, and they had kind of a special windshield placard, and we made sure there were spots reserved for them. It was a lot of detailed work, but as I think about how we need to do that for an in-person kind of regular ceremony, it wasn't terribly different from what we normally do. Okay, I think I'm ready to show you some pictures. I love that we're ending on, can I decorate my car? Because I think that's the photo that I have queued up. Again, we had no idea what to expect. We were so nervous going into this thing, and I am thrilled that it turned out the way it did. So yes, families decorated their cars, and I wanted to start on this picture because it gives you a good view of kind of the scope of this parking lot. The parking lot is not just the hundreds of cars behind Max's car. Off to the left in the top where you see those kind of funny awnings, that's where the farmer's market would normally be set up. We've got red decoration, kind of big ribbons. They're actually big tablecloths tied around those pillars for our school colors. And there is a much larger parking lot on the other side of those. So while we're kind of standing where the stage is, you can see how far away some of these cars were. And I'll show you how we kind of mitigated the line of sight issues. Before I go to another picture, I'll also say, and it almost brought tears to my eyes when I realized what was going on. This parking ramp over here on the right, I kept seeing and hearing noise coming from that area through the whole night. Those were our teachers. They snuck onto the roof of that parking ramp because they couldn't attend in person, and they were cheering their kids on. Oh, I get verklempt thinking about it. Let me see here, more parking lot photos. So you're thinking like, I bet you had a lot of complaints about people who couldn't see anything. We would have if we didn't have these giant screens set up. I think we had 3 of them set up in the parking lot so people could see what was going on at all points of the ceremony. While cars were coming in, we had, this is kind of a shot, our marketing director for our district, who's fantastic. I didn't even know he was doing this until the night of. He would have little quiz questions up there, honk your horn if this. He would play short videos of congratulation from the community. It really kept people engaged in what was going on. And this, again, all the sound from those videos was broadcast through your car radio by tuning in, or via live stream if you were offsite and needed to access it that way. So that was unexpected and really cool. This is from our district website, this gallery of photos. So if you're interested in seeing that, please feel free. The school board was allowed to attend. That was what that looked like. Another good shot of one of those video screens. This is a nice shot. So as students were dismissed in groups of 10 from their cars, there are You can kind of see the little stars that are on the pavement there marking the 6-foot distance. Kids never violated that expectation. They stayed 6 feet apart the whole night. And then as they kind of walked and we announced their name, they stand where this young man here on the right is standing. They took off their mask and they posed for a really nice picture. And the pictures turned out gorgeous. I mentioned earlier that we folded in honors convocation with all of the students' awards and accolades. This was the point at which we announced those two. And I'll be honest, I think it's something we're going to keep because it really showcased those achievements for the entire school community, not just the people who attend honors convocation. So every student had a reader card, and Mrs. Mihal, our director of early college, is the one at the podium there. She would read, Wendy Zadeb's name, and then flip the card over and read all of the things that Wendy achieved, whether it was athletics or academic. We had a couple of parents, and at the time it's like, oh my goodness, how many more details can we handle? But we did it. We had a parent, could you announce my son's Eagle Scout Award? He just got the Eagle Scout Award. We're like, sure, we'll get it in there. We'll figure it out. We also kind of, I don't know, the pandemic's crazy. It does funny things. We're a pretty formal school. We're one of the oldest schools in the state, and it's a very traditional ceremony. We kind of threw caution to the wind and said, this is your ceremony. You guys have missed out on enough. This is just one example, but kids came with their mortar boards decorated. We had cowboy hats. We had stoles that were meaningful with the colors of countries that their families were from. It was a really beautiful event. I think we're going to keep some of that stuff. I mean, as I thought about it, I'm not sure why this event needs to be so formal. Maybe it does need a little bit of fun and personality. So that's my amazing team, all masked up. And we did not have a single complaint. And I don't know if people were just tolerant because they had been locked in their houses all spring. But the combination of making that pickup event at the high school special hours before and the fanfare that this event turned out to be, we are planning on doing something like this again this year because of the restrictions that still exist for gathering. Our normal commencement is at DeVos Fieldhouse on Hope College's campus, which is their basketball facility. Beautiful facility. But because it's indoors, I don't even think I could get my graduating class in there. So we've already reserved this space, this Holland Civic Center parking lot space for commencement 2021. And my hope is that instead of needing to have all of the kids in their cars with their families, we might be able to have some kind of chaired seating out in the parking lot where the kids might be able to sit as a class or sit as families or something like that. But lots to think about, and it makes me happy just kind of scrolling through these pictures, seeing them again. But that's what I have to share, and I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
Well, I appreciate you sharing that, Katie, because like I said, I'd followed this on social media and I thought, wow, that was really unique. And I thought it was worth, throwing out there because, these times have caused us to be more creative for sure. And I like your observations about why does it have to be so formal? I know the commencement ceremonies that I officiated also were very formal, and maybe those just kind of questioning some of the traditions that are really worth keeping and some maybe that aren't. So I congratulate you for being open to that and your staff for taking that on. So we appreciate all of the principals that shared today. I don't know how anybody could walk away from what we've just heard without some other great ideas and learning from each other. So just in the little bit of time that we have left, Angel is going to put all of the secretary attendees into breakout rooms. In the past, secretaries have told us, oh, I'd really love to, talk to other people and be able to get ideas. So we also have a Google Doc ready for you to capture those ideas. And I think Angel shared that in the chat. If she didn't, she's planning on it. She did. So the Google Doc is there for you to be able to record kind of, your thoughts as a group, and then we can share that with the other attendees as well. So once again, this will be recorded and shared. So if somebody in your district needs to see this and you want them to see these great ideas, you can feel free to share that link as well. So thank you, everyone. Appreciate you. Have a great rest of your day. And secretaries, we're going to put you into breakouts.